It started with a whisper, a rumor in the darkest corners of the internet. A 10-second distorted audio clip posted to an encrypted forum. The quality was terrible, like a recording of a recording, but the voice was unmistakable. It was Drake, and the song was something no one had ever heard before. For millions of fans, it was a jolt of excitement. For the music industry, it was a tremor. But for Drake and his inner circle at OVO Sound, it was the first sign of a digital tsunami. They didn't know it yet, but they were in the middle of one of the most sophisticated and audacious digital heists in music history. This wasn't just a leak. This was a hostage situation, and the prize wasn't just a few songs. It was the entire master copy of Drake's highly anticipated Unreleased album. To understand how they pulled it off, you have to understand the target. By the 2020s, Drake wasn't just an artist. He was a global institution. His album releases weren't just musical events. They were cultural moments, capable of shifting trends and generating hundreds of millions of dollars in a matter of days. The security around an unreleased Drake album is legendary. It's a digital Fort Knox. Files are encrypted, stored on air-gapped servers, computers deliberately disconnected from the internet, and access is granted to a handful of trusted individuals. Think of it like the launch codes for a nuclear missile. Only a few people have the keys, and they never have them all in the same place. So, how do you break into a fortress? You don't storm the gates. You find someone on the inside to open them for you, without them ever knowing they're doing it. The attack didn't begin with a line of code. It began with a name. A hacker collective, known only by the handle Phantom Cord. They weren't your typical basement hackers looking for bragging rights. They were patient, meticulous, digital ghosts who moved without a trace. For 6 months, Phantom Cord did nothing but watch. This was Phase 1, reconnaissance. They scoured social media, LinkedIn profiles, and public records. They weren't looking at Drake, they were looking at his orbit, his producers, his audio engineers, his managers, even the assistants. Who had access? Who was the weakest link in the human firewall? They found their target in Leo Martinez, one of Drake's go-to producers. A genius in the studio, but like many creatives, his focus was on the art, not on his digital security. Phantom Cord studied him. They knew what software he used, what plugins he downloaded, even what food he ordered for late-night studio sessions. They were building a psychological profile, and they were preparing the bait. Phase 2. The spear phishing attack. This wasn't your average spam email. This was a masterpiece of deception. Leo received an email, seemingly from the official Grammy Consideration Committee. The subject line read, "Urgent. Submission metadata required for Album of the Year." The email explained that for Drake's upcoming album to be eligible for the next awards cycle, they needed him to upload the final track metadata, song titles, writer credits, production notes, to their secure, encrypted portal. The link led to a perfect replica of the real Grammy portal. Leo, under pressure and dealing with a dozen other tasks, didn't notice the subtle imperfections. He entered his professional email and his password, a password he, like so many people, reused for other accounts. That was it. The trap was sprung. Phantom Cord didn't get the album, not yet, but they got something far more valuable. They got the key. Leo's password was the same one he used to access OVO's shared cloud drive and their internal VPN, the virtual private network that allowed trusted collaborators to work remotely. Phase 3. Infiltration and lateral movement. Phantom Cord was inside. They moved slowly, cautiously. They found session files, demo tracks, and voice notes. A treasure trove, but not the final prize. The finished, mastered album was on a different server, the Vault server, which wasn't directly accessible from the cloud. But with Leo's credentials, they could access the OVOVPN. They were no longer outside the fortress, they were walking through the courtyard. They spent weeks mapping the internal network, moving from one system to another, covering their tracks, deleting logs. They were ghosts in the machine. Finally, they found it. A server named CLB_final_masters, certified lover boy. It was protected by another layer of encryption, but the hackers had been watching network traffic. They had deployed a keylogger, a piece of malware that records every keystroke. When another high-level engineer logged into the server to perform a routine check, the keylogger captured the final password. They had the final key. Now came the most dangerous part. Phase 4. Exfiltration. Downloading a multi-gigabyte album would create a massive spike in data traffic, one that would instantly trigger alarms. So, they didn't. Phantom Cord initiated a low and slow transfer. They broke the album down into thousands of tiny data packets. They disguised these packets to look like normal, everyday network traffic. Email updates, software patches, system pings. Over the course of 72 hours, they bled the album out of OVO's servers, one tiny drop at a time. It was the digital equivalent of smuggling a priceless painting out of a museum, 1 square inch at a time. By the time the final packet was sent, Drake and his team were completely unaware. They were busy planning the rollout, shooting music videos, and preparing for the biggest album drop of the year. They were celebrating a victory, not knowing the war had already been lost. Then came the 10-second clip, the whisper. OVO's cybersecurity team went into overdrive. They scanned their systems looking for a breach. At first, they found nothing. Phantom Cord's work was that clean. It was a ghost hunt. But the clip was real, and the panic was setting in. 2 days later, the first message arrived. It was an anonymous, encrypted email sent to Drake's management. There was no grand manifesto, just a simple, chilling demand. It read, "We have the album. All of it. The masters, the artwork, the marketing plan. 20 million in Monero cryptocurrency. You have 48 hours. If we don't receive payment, we release it all, for free. The world will hear your album. But you won't make a dime?" Phantom Cord. It was checkmate. Releasing the album early would ruin a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign. Paying the ransom was unthinkable. It would fund the criminals and set a dangerous precedent for the entire industry. They were trapped. The FBI Cybercrime Division was brought in, but even they were facing a dead end. The hackers had used layers of proxies and anonymous networks. They were untraceable. With the clock ticking down, OVO's forensics team worked around the clock, combing through petabytes of data, looking for a single mistake. One digital footprint. They re-examined the spear phishing email sent to Leo. The server it came from was a dead end, a hijacked server in Eastern Europe. The code for the fake website was generic, but then one analyst noticed something. A single, custom-coded image compression script used on the fake login page. It was an obscure piece of code, highly efficient but not standard. It was almost like an artist's signature. On a hunch, they ran this unique script's digital signature against a global database of known malware. For hours, there was nothing. Then, a hit. The same compression script had been used once before. A year earlier, in a minor, almost insignificant hack of a small video game company's forum. That hack was sloppy. The perpetrator hadn't bothered to hide their IP address properly for a brief 30-second window. It was a rookie mistake, made long before they became the sophisticated Phantom Cord. But the Internet never truly forgets. That old IP address was logged, and it was traced back to a university library's public computer in Toronto, Drake's own hometown. The FBI and Canadian authorities moved fast. They pulled the library's security footage from the date of the old hack, and they got a face. Cross-referencing it with university records, they found their man, a 22-year-old computer science prodigy. He wasn't the leader of Phantom Cord, but he was a key member. He was their coder, and he had made one tiny, arrogant mistake. He had reused his own work. With their coder identified, the rest of the collective crumbled. Within 12 hours of the discovery, authorities had the ringleader cornered. The heist was over. The album was secure. In the end, Drake's album was never leaked, but the incident sent a shockwave through the industry. It was a terrifying reminder that in the digital age, the most valuable assets are just lines of code, vulnerable to an attack that can come from anywhere. But the story doesn't end there. Drake, being Drake, didn't just move on. He was shaken, but also inspired. Sources say he went back into the studio. He scrapped 2 of the tracks from the stolen album, feeling they were now tainted. He wrote and recorded 3 new songs, fueled by the paranoia, the betrayal, and the victory of the ordeal. When the album finally dropped, it was different from the one the hackers had stolen. It was stronger, more defiant. It broke streaming records and was hailed by critics as one of his best. In a strange twist of fate, Phantom Cord's attempt to sabotage him had only pushed him to create something even better. They stole his album, but in the end, they couldn't steal his art. The story of the Drake heist is a wild ride, a perfect storm of genius-level creativity and genius-level criminality. It shows just how fragile our digital world really is. What do you guys think? Could something like this happen again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the stories that happen in the shadows. Thanks for watching.